You told yourself you moved on. So why is it every time you rise, their shadow rises too? You're not in love, you're not looking back, but somewhere deep inside, your wins still echo with a name you don't say out loud anymore. This isn't about them. This is about the final wound Allah is trying to heal now that you're strong enough to face it. 1. You thought it was over, but your soul never left the scene. You thought you were done. You stood up. You walked away. You told yourself it was over. You prayed for peace. You begged Allah to erase the feeling. And when silence came, you believed it was healing. So you started over. You changed your life. You built better habits. You worked harder. You grew stronger. You tried your best to act like it never mattered, like it was just a chapter, like it didn't leave a mark that still whispers their name in the quiet. And then you started winning. The goals you once dreamed of, you're achieving them now. The person you used to imagine becoming for them, you've become him even without them. But that's when something strange started happening. Not in front of others, not during the noise, but when you're alone, in stillness, in the quiet moments after success, when everything looks perfect, but suddenly you feel a strange ache, a memory, a flash, their face, their voice, their name. You're not reaching out, you're not crying for them, but something inside you is still speaking their name in silence. Why? Because even though you moved on with your life, your soul never left the place where they broke you. You kept walking. You kept building. You became the version of you always hoped they'd love. But deep inside, in a quiet corner of your chest, there's still a piece of you that froze the day they left. You buried the contact. You deleted the photos. But you never buried the meaning. You never gave that pain a proper ending. Because when they left, they didn't just walk away. They left you behind in pieces. And you were too tired, too heartbroken, too numb to collect them. So you did the only thing you could do, survive. But survival is not healing. It's just postponing the tears until you're strong enough to cry them without collapsing. And now that Allah is giving you strength, now that He's blessing you with growth, with peace, with small victories, He's bringing up what never got the chance to surface before. Not to reopen the wound, but to finally close it. Because He knows something you haven't admitted yet. You never really said goodbye. Not to them, but to the version of you who was still waiting, still hoping they'd come back, still quietly wondering, will they see me now? Will they regret it? Will they miss what they let go? You didn't move on fully. You moved forward, but the door where they left you was never shut from the inside. And Allah, in His mercy, doesn't want you to live with an open wound, pretending to be a scar. So He brings them up again, not as a temptation, not as a punishment, but as a divine message. You don't need to carry this anymore. You don't need their recognition to be whole. You don't need their memory to feel like a man. You don't need their ghost to fuel your greatness. You just need to go back to the place in your soul where you were left behind and take yourself back. This isn't about love anymore. It's about release. And if you're seeing them now at the height of your growth, during your wins, it's not of weakness. It's that you're finally strong enough to feel what pain silenced. This is the part where you don't just walk forward. This is the part where you heal completely. Because Allah didn't bring you this far just to carry a silent burden in your heart. He's not just blessing you, He's freeing you. And sometimes it takes every win to finally realize you're not missing them. You're returning to yourself. 2. You keep seeing them because you linked their exit to your value. You keep seeing them and it confuses you because you're not chasing them anymore. You've changed your path. You've outgrown that chapter. You've filled your time with better things, better habits, better prayers, You've told yourself again and again they don't matter now. And yet, in your quietest wins, in your most personal victories, their memory returns. Not because you want them back, but because something deep inside you still ties who you are to how they left. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was a message your soul secretly believed. If I was really enough, they wouldn't have walked away. You didn't just lose a person. You lost the belief that you were worthy as you were, because their absence felt like proof that something in you was missing, that something about you wasn't good enough to stay for, that no matter how hard you tried, it still wasn't enough. And that belief, you never confronted it. You buried it under ambition. You used it as fuel to get better, to get sharper, to get stronger. You told yourself, I'll become someone they'll regret losing. But here's the truth Allah wants you to hear now. You were never missing anything. Their leaving wasn't a reflection of your value. It was a reflection of their capacity. And sometimes, Allah lets people leave not because you failed, but because they weren't meant to witness your becoming. Because had they stayed, you would have spent your whole life trying to earn what was never meant to be conditional. You keep seeing them now, not because your heart is weak, but because your heart still hasn't healed from the false belief that their exit defined your worth. It didn't. It never did. But that lie became a quiet voice inside you, the one that whispered during every success, but they didn't choose me. And that voice, it still lives inside your victories. Because even now, after all you've accomplished, some part of you still sees their absence as proof that you weren't enough. That's what Allah is trying to heal. That's why He brings them back into your thoughts, not to reopen the wound, but to finally extract the lie. He's showing you that your wins aren't just blessings. They're mirrors. And when you look closely, you'll realize you've been trying to prove your worth to a version of yourself that still believes you were the reason they left. But Allah never measured your value by who stayed. He measured it by how you rose when no one clapped, by how you kept walking even when you felt unworthy, by how you chose Him even when others didn't choose you. You are not valuable because they stayed or left. You are valuable because Allah created you with purpose, with intention, with a heart that was always meant to be seen, not by someone who couldn't handle it, but by the one who formed it. So if you keep seeing them in your wins, it's not because they were meant to be part of your success. It's because Allah is gently removing the last illusion that your worth needed to be proven to someone who didn't have the eyes to see it. He's freeing you from the ache that says, they would have stayed if I was better, because they wouldn't have. And your success isn't proof that you've finally become enough. It's proof that you were already enough, even when you were broken, even when they didn't choose you, even when you thought you had to earn love that was never real. You keep seeing them, not because your heart is stuck, but because Allah is showing you, you were never the problem. You were the prayer they weren't ready to receive. And now, Allah is answering you, not with them, but with a version of you that no longer doubts His own worth. 3. Their face returns, because you built the dream with them in it. You worked so hard to let them go. You tried everything: distraction, prayer, silence, change. You unfollowed, you moved on, you healed, or at least you thought you did. Until one quiet moment, when success finally started knocking on your door, and their face knocked too. Not in reality, but in memory, in emotions you didn't invite, in whispers you thought you buried long ago. And the truth is, you didn't miss them. You missed the dream. Because when you pictured your future back then, they were everywhere in it. You didn't just love them, you wove their face into your purpose. Their name was hidden between your plans. Their voice was in every one day you used to whisper under your breath. They were the background of your ambition. You worked, not just to grow, but to grow with them. You prayed, not just for healing, but for them to still somehow be part of the story. And now, when that story starts unfolding without them, your soul gets confused. It feels the win, but it also feels the absence. Because what you built now looks like what you once imagined with them standing beside you. But they're not here. And deep down, there's still a small part of you asking, was this supposed to be ours? That's why their face comes back, not because you're not over them, but because your dream never got rewritten. You just kept walking with the same blueprint, the one that still had space for someone who didn't stay. And Allah knows that. He's not judging you for it. He's not angry that their memory returns in moments of joy. He understands, because he saw how pure your hope once was. He saw how much of your heart you gave, how deeply you planned a future they never promised. And now, he's gently untying that hope from the outcome. Because your dream was never wrong, but your destination needed to change. You were building a life with someone who didn't have the soul to walk it with you. And Allah, in His mercy, removed them from the plan. Not because they were evil, but because your purpose was bigger than the version of you who needed them in it. So now, when you start rising, their face returns like a shadow, not to haunt you, but to remind you of a truth you avoided. You need to rebuild the dream without them in it, not out of bitterness, but because your soul deserves a vision that doesn't bleed. Your heart deserves a future where you're not haunted by the voice of someone who couldn't stay for the real you. It's okay that their image comes back. It's okay that you feel something when you win. That's not weakness, it's your blueprint breaking. It's Allah remodeling your purpose. And sometimes, before He can give you what's truly meant for you, He needs to take you back to what you imagined, not to shame you, but to let you finally let it go. You are allowed to build again. You are allowed to rewrite everything. You are allowed to create a vision of success where your peace doesn't echo with someone else's name. Because Allah isn't just giving you the life you asked for. He's giving you the life you didn't know you were allowed to dream of, one that's still beautiful, even without the face you once thought would be beside you. And maybe that's not the ending you wanted, but it will be the one that sets you free. 4. Allah is using your wins to reach the wounds that pain couldn't touch. Sometimes the most painful part of healing is that it waits for peace. Because when you're shattered, survival becomes your only priority. You're not thinking about closure or meaning or lessons. You're just trying to breathe, to stand, to make it through one more day without falling apart. And that's exactly what you did. You survived. You kept walking with wounds that never got named. You kept praying with emotions you didn't have the words for. You smiled when your heart felt heavy. You stayed quiet about things that burned you from the inside, because you told yourself that time would fix it. But time didn't heal it. It only covered it. And now that things are finally going right, now that you're achieving what you once begged for, it's not confusion you feel. It's something you don't want to admit. Sadness that doesn't match the success. It hits you in moments when you're supposed to be happy, in the car after a win, on the walk home from a compliment, after a prayer that felt powerful, that strange, quiet ache in your chest, that sudden memory you didn't ask for, that old name that returns like it never left. You're not sad because things are going wrong. You're sad because something is trying to come up, now that you finally feel safe enough to feel it. You see, Allah didn't forget the pain you hid beneath your strength. He just knew you weren't ready to feel it before. So He gave you what you needed first. He gave you stability, growth, peace, little moments of clarity, just enough light so that when the darkness from your past finally returns, you don't drown in it. You face it. Because the truth is, some wounds go too deep for pain to touch. They only rise when you're whole enough to handle them. And that's where you are now. You're not broken anymore. You're stronger. you're wiser, you're softer too. And so now, Allah is using your wins to pull out what heartbreak couldn't, what silence couldn't, what even tears couldn't explain. He's using joy as a doorway to release. He's using peace as a mirror to show what you're still carrying inside. Because you didn't get a chance to feel it before. You were too focused on getting better, on appearing okay, on moving forward. You had no space for grief, no time for closure, no room to fall apart properly. But now you do. And now, those emotions return not to ruin your success, but to cleanse it. Because Allah doesn't want you to build a beautiful life on top of hidden pain. He wants you to be free, not just healed on the outside, but emptied on the inside. So when an old memory flashes across your mind after a win, when your chest feels heavy in a moment that should feel light, when you whisper someone's name in a prayer you thought you forgot, don't run from it. Don't call it weakness. Don't assume something's wrong. It's not wrong. It's right on time. It's that your soul is finally ready to feel what it couldn't before. And Allah, in His perfect timing, is reaching the parts of you that pain couldn't get to. He's not trying to bring you down. He's trying to lift you up completely. So you never again mistake survival for healing. So you never again carry old grief into new chapters. So you never again feel haunted by memories that were only waiting for you to come back and release them. This isn't regression. This is restoration. And sometimes it takes the quiet of success for Allah to whisper, "Now, let me finish what heartbreak couldn't touch." You're not breaking down. You're breaking free. 5. You're not missing them. You're grieving who you tried to become for them. You keep thinking you miss them, that maybe you haven't let go, that maybe your heart is still stuck in the past. But the truth is, it's not them you're mourning. It's you. The version of you that only existed when you were trying to be loved by them. You weren't just in love, you were in pursuit of acceptance, of validation, of a feeling that told you you're finally enough. You shaped yourself around what they needed. You adjusted your tone, your dreams, your reactions, your pace just to be easier to love, softer to hold, harder to leave. And even now, when you've moved on, when you've let go of their place in your life, there's still a quiet ache inside you, not for their return, but for the part of you that disappeared trying to be chosen. You don't miss the relationship. You miss the version of you that tried to earn it. The one who loved with open hands and no armor. The one who forgave too quickly. The one who stayed too long. The one who hoped even when it hurt. The one who said yes to things that hurt, just to avoid another no from someone who already made you feel like too much or not enough depending on the day. You thought that if you became the best version of yourself for them, they would see it. They would stay. But they didn't. And when they left, they didn't just take your time, your love, your memories. They took the version of you that tried. And now, in your quiet victories, when you've finally stepped into strength, discipline, peace, you start to feel a strange sadness, a softness that returns not for them, but for the person you were when you still believed they were the destination. It's not love that's returning. It's grief. Grief for the boy who believed that if he gave more, he'd finally be enough. Grief for the man who watered dead plants with living hope. Grief for the part of you that thought loyalty meant sacrifice, even if that sacrifice was yourself. That's why it hurts sometimes. That's why they still appear in the quiet of your success. Because when you rise now, when you win, when you grow, when you become, you realize you're no longer becoming for someone else. And that feels both freeing and unfamiliar. Because for so long, love was a performance, and now you're performing for no one. And it makes you wonder, who am I when I'm not chasing to be loved? And Allah, He knows. He knows that what you're carrying isn't heartbreak anymore. It's a quiet sadness for the innocence that tried, for the loyalty that bent, for the version of you that gave everything just to be noticed. So now, when he lets you rise, when he blesses your path, when he answers your du'as, he doesn't just remove the people who were wrong for you. He invites you to finally mourn the you who tried to win them. Not because that version was weak, but because that version was sincere. And now that you're stronger, wiser, closer to Allah, you don't need to hate who you used to be. You just need to bury him gently and thank him, because without him, you would have never found the strength to become the man you are today. So if it still stings, if their memory still floats into your winds, pause. It's not a that you miss them. It's a that you're still learning how to love yourself outside of who you tried to be for someone else. And that is a grief Allah wants to heal completely. Not so you forget your past, but so you finally come home to the version of you that doesn't need to be chosen to feel complete. 6. You keep seeing them because you turned their exit into fuel. You don't talk about it anymore. You don't mention their name. You don't share what happened. You've convinced yourself you're past it, that it's old news, that they're irrelevant now. But every time you win, every time you grow, every time you accomplish something that once felt impossible, there's a flicker, a flash of their face, a whisper in your chest that says, if only they could see me now. And that's when the truth reveals itself, not in pain, but in power. Because you didn't just let them go. You turned their absence into fuel. You used their silence as motivation, their rejection as ignition, their departure as proof that you had something to prove. You trained harder, worked longer, fasted more, built your name in silence. You became what they never expected you to become. And everyone clapped for your glow-up. But deep down, your soul remembers what lit the fire. It wasn't vision. It was pain. It wasn't divine clarity. It was personal war. You didn't rise for the sake of becoming whole. You rose to make sure they regretted breaking you. And that's why they still appear, not because you love them, but because your rise was never fully about you. It was about being seen. It was about building something so powerful, so undeniable, that even their silence would look like cowardice. You wanted your life to become so loud that it would echo through every corner they thought they left quietly. And maybe it worked. Maybe they saw you. Maybe they regret it now. But the real question is, do you feel free? Because when the fuel is revenge, the fire never stops burning. You keep running, keep achieving, keep building. But no matter how high you go, there's always that hidden thought. What would they think of this? And Allah, He sees it. He doesn't shame you for it. He knows what they did. He knows what you lost. He knows you had no one to tell, nowhere to grieve, no one to validate the storm you carried in silence. So, He let you rise anyway. He let your pain be transformed into power, because He knew, even if your intentions were mixed, your effort was real. But now He's asking you something new. He's asking if you're ready to be free, not just strong. Because there's a difference between strength built to escape pain and strength built to outgrow it. One keeps you fighting ghosts. The other finally lets you rest. You keep seeing them not because you're stuck, but because the fire you lit was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to get you out of the rubble, not keep you burning forever. You don't need their absence to keep moving anymore. You don't need their rejection to feel alive. You don't need their silence to feel seen. Allah already saw you. He saw you before they left. He saw you when you wept in secret. He saw you when you used pain like a weapon just to survive. But now, He wants more for you than survival. He wants peace. He wants purity in your becoming. So when their face comes back during your wins, don't think it's weakness. It's from your Lord. You don't have to prove anything anymore. Let the fire go now. Let the climb be for you. Let the next level be about what you're becoming, not who you're escaping. Because Allah didn't just let you win to prove something. He let you win so you could release everything that started the journey with fire and finish it with light. 7. Their image reappears because you're still waiting for unspoken closure. You've done everything right. You've stopped checking their profile. You don't revisit old messages anymore. You've prayed, you've cried, you've told yourself over and over again, it's done, I've moved on, it doesn't matter anymore. And for the most part, that feels true. You've grown, you've changed, you've built something real. But even now, after all this time, there are still random moments when their image flashes across your mind. When you hear a voice that sounds like theirs in a crowd. When you win something, and for a second, you imagine what they would have said. When your heart randomly feels heavy, even though you're no longer in love, and you wonder, why are they still here? You see, you're not longing for them. You're longing for what was never said. You're longing for closure, not the fake kind, not the polite text that says, I wish you the best, not the fake smile that pretends the pain was mutual. You want the real kind. You want the conversation you never had, the one where they finally tell the truth, where they admit what they did, where they say, it wasn't your fault, where they look you in the eye and say, you didn't imagine what we had. But that moment never came. And that silence, it grew roots. And now, even after everything you've become, part of you is still sitting there, in the middle of the unanswered ending, waiting for someone to circle back and give you permission to let go. But here's what Allah is showing you now. You've been waiting for closure from someone who was never capable of giving it. Not because you're unworthy, but because they were never honest enough to end what they started with the same care they used to begin it. So instead, they left quietly, or messily, or half-heartedly. And you were forced to build peace in a war they never admitted they caused. That's why their image returns. Not because your heart is confused, but because a part of you still believes they owe you healing. And Allah, in His mercy, brings up their face, their voice, their memory, not to torment you, but to say softly, you don't need them to free you, I will. Because the truth is, real closure never comes from people, it comes from surrender. It comes from accepting the apology you'll never hear. It comes from walking away without the explanation you deserved. It comes from realizing that sometimes the lack of closure is the closure. Because if they were meant to bring you peace, they wouldn't have left you in pieces. So when their image reappears in your wins, when your heart suddenly aches in moments of joy, don't panic. Don't call it weakness. It's not a step backward. It's a final release trying to happen. It's Allah inviting you to stop replaying the last scene of a movie that was never meant to have a perfect ending. Because if they were strong enough to say goodbye properly, you would have never had to heal without answers. But maybe Allah didn't allow that ending for a reason. Because He wanted you to find peace in Him, not in someone else's apology. He wanted your closure to be divine, not dependent. He wanted you to realize you were never waiting for them to come back. You were waiting to believe that they were never coming back and that it's okay. So if you still feel it, it's not because you're stuck. It's because you're finally letting go, not of them, but of the hope that they'll return and make it right. And once you let go of that hope, you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Not their presence, but your own peace. 8. Allah isn't just blessing you, He's emptying you. You've been winning lately. Things are finally starting to shift. People are noticing. You're getting stronger, sharper, more grounded. The work is paying off. The prayers are being answered. Life, at least on the surface, is moving forward. But in the quiet, something still feels heavy. You smile, but not all the way. You celebrate, but a part of your heart doesn't join in. And every now and then, even in the middle of your victories, they return. Not in reality, but in thought, in feeling, in sudden flashes of memory that don't ask for permission. And you wonder, why now? Why do I still feel this? Why are they still here when they're not even part of my life anymore? And the answer is almost too soft to hear. Because Allah isn't just blessing you, He's emptying you. You thought you were being lifted up just to shine, just to succeed, just to show the world you survived. But Allah had a deeper plan. He didn't bring you this far just to reward you. He brought you this far so He could clean out what you never had the space to let go of before. You see, when you were broken, your soul closed certain doors just to survive. There were parts of your pain you never opened. Parts of your heart you kept locked, not because you didn't want healing, but because you were too exhausted to feel everything at once. So you moved forward with weight still inside you, smiling but carrying, working but bleeding, healing but not fully. And now when you finally built something stable, Allah begins the part that feels confusing. He brings the memories back. He stirs the emotions you thought were long gone. He lets the echo of their voice return, not because He wants to test your strength, but because He wants to remove what's still hiding in the quiet corners of your heart. Not to break you, but to empty you. Because real peace doesn't come when you succeed. It comes when you succeed and no longer carry what you were never meant to bring with you. And sometimes what you're still carrying isn't even love anymore. It's fear, it's guilt, it's unprocessed grief. It's a quiet story your soul keeps whispering. You were the reason they left. You were the one who failed. You were never enough. That lie didn't die just because they did. That wound didn't close just because you don't talk about it. It just went deeper. And Allah, in His mercy, is pulling it out now. Not through heartbreak, but through healing. Not in collapse, but in calm. Not in your lowest moment, but in your highest. Because it takes real strength to feel what you once avoided. It takes real surrender to realize that success isn't the end of healing. It's the beginning of what peace can finally uncover. So if they still come up in your wins, if you still feel the sting when you're rising, if joy still feels incomplete, know this: you're not regressing. You're being cleansed. Because Allah doesn't want you to carry old stories into new blessings. He doesn't want your next chapter to be built on pain that wears a new outfit. He wants you emptied of every false narrative, every silent ache, every whisper that tells you your worth is still tied to someone who couldn't see it. You're not seeing them because you miss them. You're seeing them because they represent what Allah is trying to finally release from you. So let it come up. Let it pass through. Let their image return, not as a test but as a farewell. Because this time, you're not asking them to stay. You're not seeking an answer. You're not needing their voice to feel whole. You're finally strong enough to feel the wound and walk through it without keeping the weight. Allah isn't just blessing you. He's freeing you. And if it takes every win, every reminder, every silent tear, to release what you were never meant to carry into your destiny, then know this: it's not pain, it's purification, and you're almost at the end of it. You're not full of them, you're just being emptied, so you can finally be full of you. So if they keep showing up in your wins, if their memory returns when you're finally rising, don't see it as failure. See it as a sign. That Allah is not just giving you blessings. He's reaching into the places that were too broken to heal before. He's cleansing the grief that couldn't speak when you were surviving. And now that you're stronger, He's gently pulling out what was never meant to stay. You don't need their face in your future. You don't need their voice in your victories. You don't need their ghost in the garden Allah planted just for you. You were never rising for them. You were rising so you could finally leave the version of you that still thought love had to be earned through pain. Allah isn't just blessing you, He's freeing you. And even if it takes every win to finally forget who you were, never meant to carry into it, it will be worth it. You're not being haunted, you're being healed. And this is the part where you stop looking back and finally walk forward as the man you were always becoming.